Now let us come down to what exactly is the life cycle of a fragment. Now the fragment, since it is embedded in an activity, most of the life cycle it resembles that of a activity. So most of the methods are same, and also it works in conjunction with the life cycle of the activity. Now we can see two ways the life cycle of a fragment. First, when we add through an XML file, and secondly when we add through the code. So let us see the first case when we add this through the code, through the XML file. Oh, sorry, I just missed up. So we again added the fragment tag to the XML file. Now before we come down to the life cycle, one or two points that we need to see that need some attention here is one, when we add a fragment to a layout and we don't assign any name to the fragment, then it carries the name of the ID, the layout that or the entity to which you add the fragment to it. So this means when, as we have added F1 to the fragment transaction, but we haven't given it any specific name. So in that case, this becomes the name of the fragment, and this is the identity to locate the fragment. So in case I need to find out whether my fragment is there within the fragment manager, then I need to find this by find fragment by ID. And as you can see, we have two ways to find, either by a tag or by an ID. So either we assign a tag to a fragment, or the ID that I'll just show you what we can do is you can simply pass in as mile. So this is currently the ID for the fragment in case you don't assign any specific ID from yourself. So this is the first point that we must keep in mind, that this ID, it becomes the identification for the fragment in case nothing particular has been assigned to it. So just remove off, as we don't need currently to find out a fragment. And secondly, in the fragment on create view method, in case you add a fragment through an XML file, then this will always be null, since the content view for the activity has yet not taken shape. But the important point is this false. This always needs to be false even if the container is there or is not there. So we need not attach the fragment view to the container. That automatically is taken care of by the system of attaching it to the activity. So this we can have a check when we add a fragment through code. Then we can check, in case it is null, then we can simply return null, as there is no view to which we can attach to. But in case we add by XML file, this obviously will be null, as the parent activity doesn't have any container in position. But the attached to root parameter should always be false in case of fragments. Now I've written all the methods for the life cycle of a activity. We must maybe remembering on start, on resume, on restart, on pause, on stop, on destroy. So these are all the common life cycle methods for the activity, and similarly we have added for the fragment, and we shortly see what exactly is the sequence of those methods. And I've added a small tag for my log, so that we can examine the log as to what sequence it is following for showing of the callback methods. So now let us see how it goes. So there are two ways you can start off a fragment. One is through the XML file, and the second is through the Java code. Now in case we start it through the XML file, the first method that gets called is the onInflate. The onInflate method, it inflates the XML file and gives a callback to the onInflate method. So if you see the onInflate method, what parameter it carries? It carries a reference to the activity, a attribute set. Now what exactly is the attribute set? It is the values that you pass into the fragment tag. These are the attributes that are passed into the attribute set, and then you have a bundle. Now this bundle contains the state in case you have saved any values to the state uh, when the fragment gets destroyed, so that state you can obtain in the onInflate method. So this is the first method that gets called when the XML file is inflated for the layout. Now then the fragment is attached to the activity. Now again, if you see the onAttached method, it again has a reference to the activity. Now this again has a reference to the activity that it is getting attached to. So we can use this activity object in case we need to have some exchange between the activity and the fragment. And then onCreate method for the fragment. Now then comes the onCreate view. Now this is the method which we have already used, and this generates the view for the fragment, but the main part is this onCreate, it gets called before the onCreate view. So you cannot handle any views that you have in the fragment in the onCreate method. So everything as a part of the view should be handled within the onCreate view or any method beyond onCreate view. Now next in line is the onActivity created. Now this onActivity created, it gives an indication to the fragment that the activity onCreate method has completed. So on the completion of onCreate method of the activity, the onActivity created callback is called for the fragment. And then our normal methods onStart and resume. Now this is the position where the fragment is in full running position and it is interacting with the user. Now in case it gets hindered or the activity gets hindered, so onPause gets called, then onStop, and in case the activity comes back into focus, then again we get back to onStart and onResume. In case nothing of that sort happens and activity gets out of focus altogether, then onDestroy view, then onDestroy, and then it gets detached from the activity, and finally the fragment ends. So this is a life cycle where the fragment starts to a running stage, and this is the cycle wherein it goes from a running stage to a finished state. So it quite resembles that of a activity. So we'll now see what sequence it follows in both cases. Now only difference here is when you run a fragment from code, so there is no XML to inflate. In that case it will directly start from onAttach. So this doesn't come into picture when you add a fragment through code. So we'll first run it through code. So I'll comment this. And even in onCreate view even in the onCreate view I have attached the container reference so that we can see when it comes null and when it actually refers to some container. And let us attach a filter here, say my filter, and add a tag lifecycle. Okay, so all said and done. Now let us fire up our emulator and see the output. So there is our fragment. Now let us go to home. Again bring our activity to focus. And then let us remove it from the stack altogether. We go back to our log stack and see what the logcat says. Control C. Let us get some log. Save it to some other folder. So as you can see, on inflate, then on attach, on create a fragment, and then on create view of fragment. As you can see, container comes out to be null, and then on create of activity, and then on activity created of fragment. So this is important. As you can see, this gets called after the on create of activity. So then we have on start, on resume, and then the activity and fragment are fully functional. Then as we move to the home screen, on pause for both, on stop for both. What I've done. On start and on stop for both, and when we again bring this to focus, on restart of activity, and this calls on start of fragment, then on start of activity, and then resume for both. So again, when we move it off the stack, on pause for both, on stop for both, and then destroying the view, destroying the fragment, detaching it, and then destroying the activity. So this is what was expected, and accordingly on the same lines we got the output. So let us now do the other way around. Instead of statically, let us add this dynamically. So let us again generate a new output. So first let us clear this off. Okay. So now we'll see what changes it becomes when you dynamically add a fragment. There it comes. Again we go to home, pick it up again, and move it off the stack. And then let us go to the logcat, select, save it to a file, say log1, okay, refresh it, and see the output. Now as you can see, we have on create of activity, and this is because the on create of activity log is written before we add any fragment. So obviously this will come before any statement comes from any callback method from the fragment. And then we have on attach, on create of fragment, on create view, and in this case you have a linear layout coming up. This is because the content view has been for the activity has been set before you attach a fragment. And then we have on activity created, and then again the same circle starts on start, on resume, and the activity and the fragment, they both are into running position. And then we go to the home screen, then on pause, on stop, and again when we come back, on restart, start, resume. And when we finally make it off the stack, on pause, on stop, on destroy. So this follows the same pattern. The only change is you don't have any on inflate. This is the main change for a fragment which is added through code. And you have a container in this case, whereas you didn't have a container in your earlier case. So as you can see, this essentially is how the life cycle of a fragment works in conjunction with that of an activity.